People gathered this evening in Washington Park to remember Timothy Thomas. He was a 19-year-old black man killed by a Cincinnati police officer in OTR on this day 20 years ago. The group marched to 13th and Republic. That's the spot where Timothy was gunned down.
That loss of life still resonates even 20 years later within this community, this neighborhood, but also throughout the entire city of Cincinnati.
20 years ago this week, all eyes were on Cincinnati. Protesters took over the streets demanding justice for Timothy Thomas, that 19-year-old unarmed black man killed by a police officer. The 3 days and nights of historic unrest left parts of the city unrecognizable. You could describe what led up to that destruction, violence, and protests in April of 2001 as the perfect storm.
Some people call it riots, some people call it civil unrest, some people call it rebellion.
To understand what happened over those 3 days in early April 2001, you have to know how we got there.
Cincinnati is now a city in search of solutions. After 3 days of rioting, a mandatory dusk-to-dawn curfew remains in place. And so too does the tension in a city still divided.
A city back then divided along racial lines.
So Timothy Thomas became the 15th African-American male to die at the hands of CPD, I believe from 1995 to 2001.
I think the reaction to how people felt was based in large part on what part of town you were from.
I think what's important to understand about the 15th is that the 15th precipitated civil unrest.
A few unseasonably warm spring days at the time added fuel to an already raging fire.
I don't mean to laugh, but the weather for April was unbelievably perfect. I mean, the weather was like 72 and sunny. And
again, there was just a perfect storm of events. Young people were out of school, extremely hot, and they took to the streets after a raucous meeting at City Hall.
I mean, people wanted to be outside. I mean, I'm not suggesting that they wanted to be outside to riot, but it was beautiful weather.
The cries for justice were heard near and far by those black and white.
As a mother, once you've seen young black boys' faces on the ground, in the morgue, in the newspaper, it does something to you.
The riots helped us change.
A change you could say was long overdue. And we're going to dig much deeper into that change and what it looks like coming up tomorrow in a special report, Cincinnati, 20 Years of Change. It airs right here on Local 12 at 7 o'clock.